I want to talk about something really important now. I want to discuss love. It's love that makes the world go round. We can't manage without love. Research shows that loving relationships are the very top priority on people's list of what they want. Of course, people may be disappointed, but in general, that's what people want, even though loving relationships, stable loving relationships, are becoming more and more difficult to find, more and more difficult to maintain. So what is love, and what are the difficulties associated with love, and how we can become free from those difficulties, how we can love others more with less distress. The Vedic wisdom gives us clear guidelines on this. First of all, what is love? Where is it coming from? The individual living being, spiritual being, is three important aspects of its being. Being, knowing, and loving. Personal self-existence, being, and knowing means potential for knowledge and ability, and then loving means the potential for fulfillment, satisfaction, ecstasy in love. It means loving exchange. We want to love something, become absorbed in love of something. Now, what is this love? A basic understanding is when we love something. I love chocolate, I love a particular person, and if we explore that carefully, we'll see that a large proportion of that is an attachment for the objects of the mind and senses. I love chocolate because it satisfies my senses, and it also satisfies my mind. I love being with, like a particular, in case of lover, for example, I love being with that person because they satisfy my mind, they satisfy my senses, and this is a large part of what is going on. One might think this is cynical, but if it is cynical, how come so many murders take place in the family? If the family is the arena for love, if loving relationships between partners is the exchange of true love, then how come so many murders take place? How come there's so much violence between people who have love for each other? So it seems fairly clear that this love, a part of this love, is attachment. And when the attachment is not fulfilled, then it leads to anger and frustration and distress. So how can we find love and satisfaction without the distress? Well, what is love? First, as I said, love means attachment to enjoying, taking for ourselves. Like a child, for example, wants to receive, it wants to get presents, it wants to get attention. But as the child grows up, then it wants to give. So we want to love, and loving means serving. Actually, from the beginning of life, the child serves the parents, pleases the parents. And then you go to school and you have to serve the school teacher. You serve, you please them. We have this desire to please people. And actually this is service. Service means that you please somebody and you get something in return. So actually, right throughout our lives, at all times, we're always serving. We're always trying to satisfy somebody else. And even if, supposing that one says, well, I'm not going to try and serve anybody, or satisfy anybody, I'll live by myself. So you live by yourself, but then you have to satisfy the senses. The eyes say, oh, I want to see some beautiful scenery. The ears say, I want to hear some beautiful music. And we have to satisfy them. The tongue says, hey, I want something nice to taste. Okay, I'll serve you. And the mind is the center of all the senses, and the mind needs to be satisfied. So we're always living by service. Now, in the Vedic wisdom, we understand that that's okay, but this service is going on in the material world. We're trying to serve, we're trying to find satisfaction in material objects. But matter, dull, inert matter, can't satisfy the conscious spiritual self. Because the conscious spiritual self is made of being, knowing, and loving. And matter doesn't have those qualities. So how can we find satisfaction? We want to love. So how can we find satisfaction? There's two kinds of love. There's what's called great love and small love. The spiritual self is spiritual by nature, not material. But in the material world, we're trying to love either matter or love other people who think that they're matter. They think that they're this body. And that's the problem. Matter can't satisfy the spiritual self because matter is inert and the spiritual self is live, it's conscious. It wants life, it wants knowledge, it wants loving satisfaction, fulfillment. So, what is the recipe? The recipe is that instead of trying to find our primary fulfillment here in this material world, we try to find our primary loving fulfillment by directing our loving propensity to the divine. Love of God is actually, in all the religions, for example, and the spiritual parts, love of God is the primary factor. Like Christ said, what's the first commandment? You should love God. And the same is true in Islam. Love of God is a primary goal in Islam. In Judaism, the same thing. And in the Vaishnava. These are just examples from the different spiritual paths. So love for the divine. Now, how will this solve our problems? So in the Vedic tradition, there's a concept of great love and small love. Small love is when the individual soul puts out the loving propensity into the world around it and tries to find satisfaction by attachment to the material things or material personalities in the world. Becomes attached, and when the objects of the senses change or disappear, then it becomes frustrated, angry, and there's distress. This is small love. And great love is when the individual soul directs a loving propensity towards the divine, and then the love of the divine for all creatures and the world flows through the individual and out into the world. So, although the living entity, we can put our loving propensity up to the divine, that doesn't mean to say that we don't love others, because that loving love comes through us like a channel. And just like a conduit, say if there's nectar coming through a conduit, so the conduit also tastes the nectar. So similarly, that love of the divine for everyone can come through us and go out into the world to everyone else, so that we can, in a sense, we can love on behalf of the divine, but we don't become attached in the same way. This is great love. So small love means the individual self is directing its loving propensity towards material objects, becoming attached, and then suffering distress. And great love means directing the propensity towards the divine, and then the love of the divine for all comes through. We can channel that love, and we can love others, as it were, on behalf of the divine, and we don't, not the same attachment. And as we get more and more of that loving propensity for the divine, so we can love more and become less actually attached to the objects of love in the world around us, objects of love and the persons of love. That's an explanation of like small love and great love. Now, what I'd like you to do, if you can get in small groups, like 4 in a group, and just share on your experiences of love and loving on your own account and loving in connection with the divine. Just share your experiences like that. Okay.